I want to talk about, we were talking on the phone a couple of weeks ago, and you were telling me that you have like kind of an outline for a novel that you're planning on writing. Is that, am I getting that right? Or was it
Yeah,
just a book?
you are getting that right.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, I mean, it's the hope is that it's a movie. I
Okay.
need to kind of get it together as in a book format that would be amenable to converting to a graphic novel and or screenplay format kind
Mm-hmm.
of thing. So it's a science fiction, or more properly, like a speculative fiction story
Nice.
that is set. It's set in the future, about 150 years, and this is where my elevator pitch should come in,
Yeah.
which I'm still working on. but basically, it's there's a love story.
Mm-hmm.
This young woman and her fiance live on this island, which is well, let me back up and say what my influences are on why I wanted to tell this story.
Yeah.
which is basically like a lot of climate grief, which I think anybody that's informed is experiencing.
Yeah.
And this, and kind of also during the Trump years, this kind of despair over the ability of people to coordinate in any useful, meaningful, sustainable fashion to solve the problems which we have put into play. And so it was really, the story builds on Aldous Huxley's Island. And I don't know if you've ever read that, but it's basically his version of a utopian novel, that takes place maybe somewhere in Indonesia, with this hypothetical kingdom that is able to cherry pick the best of traditional culture and the best of technological culture, and they have this astoundingly great, harmonious psychedelic culture, which is being predated upon by the neighboring countries who covet the oil contracts and so forth.
Sure.
And so there's this intrigue around, this guy, as he comes to fall in love with this utopian culture, at the same time that he's actually an agent, basically planning and plotting to destroy it and sell it off. So the story in my mind was like, okay, well, what if there weren't hostile competitors waiting over the horizon to plunder everything? What if that was already all taken care of? What if this psychedelic island utopia was all that was left of humanity, and they had to make a go of it, under these new conditions that were actually very strict. And then you say, well, what happened to the rest of all the people? What happened to the 9 billion people at year 2060 or whatever that were around? And like, well, that kind of builds on an Aldous Huxley Brave New World scenario, in which basically, with all of the upheaval, people end up going to these, places where they can get better food, medicine, entertainment, care, and socialization and therapy than they could get anywhere else. But the condition is that they don't breed. And then they, as that generation dies off, that takes care of the population issue. But that's kind of the backstory that you don't learn until later. So in the story, and also I've been reading a lot of Margaret Atwood, her Oryx and Crake trilogy, which I don't know if you're familiar with, but it's very dark, but it's also kind of in the vein of speculative fiction and massive depopulation. And so kind of trying to ride on her shoulders, but without quite the sinister, dark, cynical, it's more of a utopian, it's a true utopian thing.
Yeah.
And even going back and reading the original Utopia by Thomas More, which was written in like 1515, that was very instructive. And a lot of the features of the Utopia of Thomas More are strong features in the social organization for this hypothetical situation in the future.
Nice.
On this island.
Yeah.
So it's a love story. And, this young woman and her fiance are from neighboring valleys, and there's some discord because my fiance's relatives had been like up as a rule. He's really eager to like make good with his family's name, and make good with their honor. And meanwhile, his fiance Lily is from like a more prominent family. Her mother was a senator who was actually involved with the human sacrifice portion of that. And then she discovers some forbidden item. They're basically deindustrialized and living in a kind of a neo tribal utopia that is overseen by this angel, basically. And she discovers some forbidden knowledge, and she starts asking too many questions, and the society starts to fall apart, and the civil war develops, and then I can't tell you the rest because you got to watch the show.
Yeah. Nice.
But as things collapse, she learns the backstory of how this all went down and how this came about, and that's actually the most interesting part. So
yeah. Nice.
The interpersonal drama is actually like the weakest part. It's like the thing I've been stalling on the most.
Yeah.
On this whole thing, because I've been really enthralled with the backstory of how to make this whole thing kind of semi-plausible.
Are you are you mostly just writing now, or are you making paintings still?
Yeah, pretty much now when I've got the time to do creative work, I'm working on the story. I've been working on it pretty consistently for like the last year.
Nice.
It actually, the inspiration of it started like right after COVID, like when the lockdown went into effect. And and you know, people were speculating of like, oh, you know, where is this coming from? You know, we shouldn't be messing with these like undisturbed habitats and like contacting these species that we wouldn't ordinarily have contact with, blah blah blah. And that was actually kind of the weird roundabout inspiration for the story. Was like, it was this idea that maybe, you know, these mega organisms of fungus that live in the soil that can function kind of like a neural network in some ways. You know, what if these plagues were like being cooked up by this like mega consciousness in the ground, and then released through different species as a way of like the fungus, like as a self-preservative mechanism.
Yeah.
And then, you know, maybe there was like some sort of psychic interface with insects like leafcutter ants or whatever that could like, you know, make this bridge to like basically transmit the message to people that they better like get their shit together and stop destroying the earth, or a whole flood of these like new plagues would like erupt and do the work for us.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a crude, not very plausible beginning to the story. And then it was just like, well, no, you know, and it's like, I'm really more of a nonfiction person. So like things that are implausible always bother me. And I'm always looking for like a more like practical solution to how to attain this premise or condition.
Sure.
And so that, you know, working from like, if there were some force that was insisting that humans stop destroying the earth and get their shit together and fix the damage and live right, you know, what would that be? What would it look like? How would it come about? What are the plausible means in which some condition like that could be satisfied? And then it all just started to kind of write itself.